On this journey to achieving your life's potential, we, Edelweiss Tokyo Life Insurance, will partner you right through. Go on, dream unlimited, dare unlimited, live Zindagi Unlimited. Edelweiss Tokyo Life Insurance.
Welcome to our special webinar series, Be Future Ready Financially. I'm your host, Pallavi. This is a series divided into 5 different sessions. This is the third session where we'll focus on couples who want to have a happy relationship and really need to know how they can plan their finances in a better manner. I'm happy to be joined by 2 of the best experts. I have Mr. Amit Kukureja with me, who's a family wealth advisor and certified financial transitionist. Amit is a fee-only investment advisor registered with SEBI. Amit helps families to identify their financial goals with the right focus on money and plans for them to achieve their goals. He specializes in managing double-income families where 2 strongly opinionated individuals may come in the way of their financial well-being. I'm also being joined by Anup Seth, Chief Retail Officer, Edelweiss Tokyo Life Insurance. A seasoned professional with 20 years of experience, Anup oversees at least 7 distribution channels, including variable agency, bancassurance, corporate agency, and brokering. Direct digital, e-commerce, group, and strategic partnerships at Edelweiss Tokyo Life. Along with strengthening the distribution channels, he heads the digitalization initiative and is extremely passionate about life insurance. I welcome both of you to this special session.
Thank you, Pallavi.
Thank you, Pallavi.
So let me start with you, Anup. Is there a magic potion that can help couples have a good, happy relationship without money coming between them as a point of disagreement?
I think I'm no expert on marriage, though I'm been married for now 19 years, but I can tell you a happy marriage is all about 2 people coming together and having a transparent relationship about their likes, dislikes, and their needs and their goals. And the best way to build a relationship is to keep money out of it, which is to take care of money and make sure the focus is on building a very rich relationship between the spouse. And most importantly is to get money out of it, which means money can do its own thing in terms of providing for all the necessary things of comfort for a good marriage to happen. You need to do a lot more than money for the relationship to prosper and to do well. That's my view on that.
Rightly said, Anup. But then we also have a family wealth advisor with us who can actually tell us there must be incidences among couples which are very much clear, and we all of us know that despite we saying that money shouldn't come between relationships, it usually does come between them. Amit, tell us, much like investments, any relationship is a long-term commitment. So how can financial planning be done, keeping this in mind that you need to take care of your money issues and money concerns without money actually coming between the 2 of you?
Sure, Pallavi. So I must call out that money is the number 2 reason of divorce in this world, which means money is significantly important to be talked about in any relationship for the relationship to flourish. Of course, in the Indian culture, there are a couple of other items which could lead to a separation between the couple, but definitely money tops the list after infidelity. Now, money is an important financial resource, and given the fact that men and women both are professional these days, and they are strongly opinionated individuals when it comes to how do they plan their life to live their life in a manner that creates fulfillment and happiness, money is one of the focus topics for the couple. So we cannot put it under the carpet. This has to be talked about. This has to be talked about in an open, transparent manner where both the husband and a wife can share their insecurities, their anxieties, their concerns about who all are involved, how they are taking care of their financial life, and how they can basically free themselves from the anxiety and fear and talk about it openly and structure their investments and income so that they can create jointly a financial success in their marriage. Money is picking up importance these days. And as 2 individuals, we both know that we have a strong vision and focus to make money work for us. And the more open we are with our partner, the more easier it gets to achieve
Absolutely.
that success.
Yeah.
In fact, Anup, both of you agreed that there has to be transparency between couples. And as far as financial planning is concerned, financial planning is for everyone. But then to bring in that amount of transparency, there has to be a conversation between the two.
Yeah.
So tell us, in your opinion, what are the kind of conversations couples should have when it comes to their money, so that there are no concerns later on, and they should have a happy and successful relationship, and they align their personal goals along with their financial goals.
Okay. Uh, I'll go first on this, Amit, if you're okay.
Sure.
So I think the most important thing for any good financial planning exercise, and particularly for a couple, is to have agreement on common life goals. You need to be able to define as to what are my life goals at different stages of marriage. As just soon as you get married, there are some financial goals that you have, which is either thinking of buying your first house, or planning for a series of 1-2 honeymoons that you want to plan for. Then you plan for your kids, your life goals change. As soon as you have kids, your goals changes towards making sure that there is enough provided for their education, their post-education, their marriage, and if possible, with today's time and age where kids are opting for careers around being entrepreneur, a first seed capital for that, and looking at their own retirement goals. So the idea is to be on common page on the financial goals, and your goals have to be did once 20 years back and then I've forgotten, because just the way your health goals keep on changing with your life stage changing, your financial goals also needs a revisit. Maybe not as frequently as your health goals, but your financial goals need to be visited once a year to see how close are you on your goals. The second point is, in today's time, as Amit mentioned, your couples, your working couples, and a lot of times our Indian society has sort of been unfair and not put an economical value to women life. And that, to me, as a subject, I see it changing, especially in the new India, the new Bharat, and I hope that changes far more drastically, is the fact that women also have an economical value to life, and women also have their dreams and aspirations. It's important to keep them counted. It's important to put a value to that. It's important to assert in that. It's important to make sure that as much the male life is valued and protected, and you put a protection for cover around it, you also put it for women life. The third and the most important thing is, a lot of time, women would pass on the subject of financial planning saying it's my spouse takes care of it. It's important that the spouse co-creates, co-owns, and co-evolves this entire financial planning exercise, so that both the husband and spouse is fully aware of all the assets and the liability the family owns. A lot of times, a lot of visibility ain't there with the spouses in case of an unfortunate incident of death of the spouse. You don't know what investments you made and what's the pattern of their returns and incomes are, and so what goals of yours have you fully covered, adequately covered, inadequately covered, so as the spouse can restart their life. So in my opinion, if you are looking for a happy marriage, you got to co-create. Am I audible? Sorry. You got to co-create, co-own, and know about the entire goals and regularly revisit it together, so that both are in full understanding of what has been provided for, what has not been provided for. That's very important. Yeah. Amit, your view.
Sure. I mean, you have summed it up really nicely, but I will echo a couple of points which are fairly important that come across from my client stories. One, as you grow, your needs change. Your psychological graph also evolves. You could be having different needs at the age of 30. You could be having different needs at 40, 50, and 60. As two individuals are growing, their needs are changing. Your constant alignment needs to happen. And hence you may be having different set of financial goals at 30, 40, 50, 60, and so on. How frequently are you aligning together on your life goals? And how is that leading to alignment on the financial goals is worth tracking, monitoring, reviewing, and of course, checking for progress. Second, both of you, if you are financially providing members of the family, both of you need to have a good insurance framework, particularly for the situation where the loss of life happens, because the family is going to get impacted with that future income that the person who was bringing to the table. So a constant review of what if I'm not around tomorrow, and what if I'm around tomorrow? How would I like to live my life? These two questions carry a lot of weightage now. And if these two
Yeah.
questions can be jointly answered in sessions where both the partners are present, and the financial goals and the financial plan and the insurance plan can be tweaked with that frequency, I think it's
Yeah.
guaranteed that the partners will live together and they will be happy, because the most essential aspect of goals fulfillment will always be addressed and taken care of. And if you can eliminate this bone of contention arising due to difference of how I should live my life or how I should manage my money, you are actually binding the couples together and they'll be more happy together talking about money. Your paradigm will completely change. If we can keep the focus on goals and insurance framework and how do we want to grow and evolve as the life progresses, I think we have won the battle.
Perfectly put.
In fact, Amit, just to add what you mentioned here, and both of you agreed that in a lot of cases, either it's maybe from the male counterpart or from the female, that the involvement is not 100% when it comes to their financial planning and their goals. So, Amit, could you share an experience or some insights as to you take care of a lot of families in their financial planning? Has there been a change? Has this tendency, which is specifically seen in women, that they don't want to get involved, they don't want to play in the forefront when it comes to their money at home? So is it changing?
It certainly is. In fact, I'm finding women more adaptive in taking over the whole process of reviewing and monitoring their financial framework. There was a time where women used to stay away from getting involved in these discussions, and they would invest all their savings in fixed deposits. But now they are also interested in learning how they can beat the inflation, how they can have investment returns which are better than fixed deposits. And at the same time, these professionally qualified women, they also understand the risk of not having a person in as a nominee for any situation where there is a loss of life happening in their case. These women are also getting more and more involved, also for a reason that they would rather be aligned with a partner than let partners' parents get involved. This parental involvement, which was the typical of Indian culture, is also going away, because now spouses are getting onboarded with respect to planning their money. So things are changing, things are evolving, and we see more ownership with women now.
Great. And that surely is a positive sign. And Anup, could you tell us, in your opinion, is it any different for couples in where only one of them is working? Like how is it different for working couples as well as households with a single income?
Yes, it's different for both, but in a broader sense, you got to look a little back from a society impact point of view. Back then, let's say 2 decades, 3 decades back, we were a joint family concept. We're now a nuclear family concept. When we were a joint family concept, essentially the whole community took care of you and took care of bringing your children up. Now, when you're a nuclear family, whether you're a double income or a single income, the reality is the responsibility of the household is on the couple.
Right.
Whether the spouse is working or not working, the importance of financial planning doesn't get taken away. The importance of common goals, whether women is working, not working, she has an equal importance, say, in the financial goals and the financial well-being of the household. It's important for us to be able to recognize the fact that even if women is a household, she's the homemaker, she still has her dreams and aspirations. And she also has a certain amount of life that she wants to live with. It's in those cases when the wife is a homemaker, it's even more bigger responsibility for the spouse to make sure that the financial goals and the financial alignments are brought right up front, because you don't want it in case of unfortunate incident, which can happen to anybody anytime. You want the spouse to be fully aware of as to what is the basis on which the financial investments have been made, the decisions have been made, to keeping the wife away from any decision, not only from a point of information availability, but also from a point of co-owning. Because like Amit was mentioning, a happy marriage is all about making sure you get money out of the table. You make sure that the planning is known, understood, and the time of access is easily accessed by both partners. The problem in a marriage comes when there is ambiguity, when there is reason to believe that there is not enough things are getting shared, not enough things are getting communicated. It's important to do that. In case of double income, the reality is, your wife, because she's also working, she's also more financially aware. She's working in a corporate. She understands tax. She understands law of the land. She understands the cost of, bringing, services and needs in somebody's life. A housewife today, thanks to the awareness program that most financial products are running, and thanks to the information asymmetry that is over in our life because of internet, people can access information very easily. So even if you're a homemaker or not a homemaker, information arbitrage is over. The world of joint family taking care of you in eventualities is over. Nuclear families then take care of themselves. The importance of financial planning is understood by everybody. And I'm going to give a recent example just to give a perspective. This COVID environment, and just to bring to the session without discussing COVID in today's time is probably incomplete. It's really amplified the importance of providing for a good financial planning exercise to make sure that you are saving enough for the contingencies. You are planning a double income, because incomes can get impaired for business or salary. In today's time, it's taught everybody that from salary cuts to job losses are around the table.
Right.
You've got to plan it together with your spouse. And if you keep your spouse on your same side, I can tell you for a matter of fact, your marriage will be far more understood and accommodated. If you keep it opaque and say, you don't worry, I'll take care of finances. One fine day you have a job loss, and one fine day you have a healthcare scare, and income is off. The person will not understand it, because you've not taken the pain to make the person understand or co-create it. So it's important for a healthy marriage that you share and you communicate and you build it together.
Right.
That's my opinion.
Absolutely. In fact, Amit, besides the financial aspect, there is an emotional aspect when we're talking about financial planning for couples, because there are two individuals working or not working. That's a different scenario. But in that case, how important it becomes to align the individual goals with the financial goals, and what could be the key strategies one needs to keep in mind and execute for a smooth sailing?
So money is an emotional subject. No matter how strongly we say that we make our decision based on the facts, the reality that research proves is that you make decisions based on your past experiences, which had emotional nuances. So at a subconscious level, those experiences are recorded. They are in your, in your long-term memory. So you always recall that experiences at a subconscious level, and then you make your decisions. Now, having said that, involving a partner to decide what we should do next, even though the partner is not financially savvy, will definitely get a perspective on non-financial background per se, right? So that person might give a view on how that goal is going to pan out for the family, how that goal is going to pan out for my children, how that goal is going to pan out for a retirement in a non-financial perspective. That is equally important, because her emotional perspective as a homemaker may add strength to your financial perspective that you're proposing if the spouse is not financially savvy. If the spouse is financially savvy, then of course it's all about fine tuning how much of a risk tolerance the spouse has and how much of a risk tolerance you have. You could be like this, you could be like this, or you could be like this. Despite these differences or the levels that at which you're operating, talking about it, sharing what matters to you the most at this age and what will matter to you the most after 10 years or 20 years, and then making a financial plan to achieve what matters to you after 10 years and 15 years, discussing that with the spouse, having an emotional buy-in, creating a plan for that, and traveling that journey is also, journey worthwhile. So, this emotional tuning about money, about life goals is a constant process. The more openly you do this, the more happier you will become faster, and the more successful your financial life will become. I might have gone on a tangent, Pallavi. I don't know if I answered your question, but the fact is you need a lot of tuning, and this tuning is not going to be permanent.
Yeah.
We all evolve as individuals and as couples. So we will have to readjust and retune ourselves on a more frequent basis, depending upon how well we are connected with each other. So the more we are involved in planning our finances, the easier it becomes to achieve our destination with respect to financial milestones.
Yeah.
I hope I answered your question, Pallavi.
Yeah, in fact, we'll cover a lot in the ongoing session. So coming back to you, Anup, since we're talking about different kinds of scenarios, also want to understand from you what role does insurance play when it comes to transparency between couples, and how can insurance help in building a solid financial foundation for any couple who's married or planning to get married?
Okay. Firstly, let me compliment Amit on a fantastic balanced answer between financial and the emotional side of the money. It's a great one. So to respond to your question, Pallavi, I think insurance is another asset class which is an important asset class for as to balance your investment portfolio. Just the way Amit mentioned a very important thing. Sometimes some things are hard coded in our memory about our previous experience, making us biased towards things. Insurance suffers from some of these biases, and I want to put them on the table. At a point in time, when the privatization happened, it's important backdrops. Let me give it. Insurance products were not one of the most favorable, cost-efficient products that the market would have seen. And insurance products over the last 2 decades have now become one of the better products available in the market. In terms of both savings and investment also. While insurance primarily important to note is a protection product. Now let me put protection on the table as the core of insurance proposition, because there is no other financial product in the market that can offer you protection, which only insurance can. Protection is important because I'll give you a perspective. And I'll reference to a married couple, I'll give it to you. See, a lot of times we land up taking liabilities in our life. A lot of times, we presume that income for us will continue to stay as is. It won't change. It increase by 10% year on year. It will increase 10% year on year, and life will be all good. But the reality is, life is not about a straight line. It finally, when you see from start to end, it will look like a straight line, but it's gone to many zigzag. Just the way India's story has gone to zigzag. The reality is, if for instance, you have taken up a liability for your house, which is your dream couple house that you've decided for, and you've taken up a couple of crores of liability, and you've assumed that income will be there. But what happens to the spouse? In case the bread earner is not there, you not only land up taking away the dream of having the house, but you also land up putting the liability on the spouse. So insurance is important from making sure that all your liabilities are protected for. You make sure that to the extent of your liabilities and to a foreseeable 10 years, at least for 10 years of your future earning, you take a protection cover. Now I'll give you an example. Let's say I've taken a liability of a house, which is 1 crore, and I have my earning, which is 20 lakh rupees a month. I must make sure that by the time somebody else in my family comes to the level of earning as much as I do to continue lifestyle, maintaining it will always take 7 to 10 years for that time. So I must take my income multiple into 10 times protection. And to the extent of my liabilities of 1 crore, I must take a protection so that in case tomorrow anything happens, that marriage, that dream that the marriage together couple has seen is not taken away. So protection is very important. Assuming protection needs are taken care of, the second most important need is your need around health. We undermine the cost of health. Insurance has great products. Like currently we have a new product on the COVID side. There are products on critical illness. one needs to protect against them. And these are costs which technically cost you 1% or 2% of the total cost. It's important to make sure that those things are insulated by taking things. The other thing I want to say to you, which I start with the backdrop of insurance. Today, insurance offers mutual funds. They are today, in terms of cost structures, comparable and better than direct mutual fund in terms of total cost structures. Gone are times where there was active cost on policy admin, allocation, the world. Now those costs are almost zero. The only cost people end up paying is probably the FMC, which is the fund management charge, which is also capped by IID at 1.35%. And let's not forget, insurance products enjoy an EEE benefit. They are exempted, which means your income is got to be tax adjusted. And when you do that, insurance products are really good. For just to give you a flavor, some of the non-participating products give you an IRR or as high as 6%, which is pre-tax. Post-tax, they are almost 8%. If you fixed deposit today at 5.5%, you have your products which can give you much better IRR, which is guaranteed income. There is no, and they're tax exempted. So insurance products were not so good. And like Amit mentioned, you should forget your old memory and look at new products in new realities, in new lights, which is where you'll understand insurance products are far more favorable than any products. Almost 30% of my portfolio is invested on insurance. And I've been in the tech sector for now a decade plus. I've seen the evolution of products. They're really good now. That's my take on insurance being a part of couple financial planning.
Sure. In fact, Amit, besides insurance, what are the other financial instruments one needs to, keep in their portfolio, and what should be the, allocation like? And would it also depend on their own own goals and their own portfolio, their profiles? Could you tell us on that?
Sure, Pallavi. So before I answer that, I want to highlight the layer that you should build up. You should always have your contingency first as the layer one. Then you should have a strong insurance framework, as Anup detailed it, as your next layer. Only once you have built your layer one and layer two, you should go into investments. And when you go into investments, again, you need to build layers. You need to build layers of capital protection. You need to build layers of tax efficiency. You need to build layers of index-based investments. And then you need to build layers of investments which are generating alpha over the index.
Yeah.
Now, what is the max level of risk as an individual that you can take? That needs to be determined by the psychometric tests. We run these tests to figure out what is individual's tolerance for the risk that the person can take. Generally, it is observed that women have a lesser tolerance for volatility than men, but in some cases, I have seen the other cases other way around. So you determine your tolerance for the variability in the returns before you build your layers of investments. The most important aspect is, after having understood your tolerance for volatility, you need to understand that the returns on your investments, they stabilize over the course of time. So how far is your goal from today? And hence how much of a volatility, which has a tendency to stabilize over the course of time, I can take up in my investments portfolio. So these are several steps. They're easier said than done, but when you go through the whole execution of building these layers until you have a solid financial goals plan to achieve your goals, it'll take you easily 2 years time frame. It's not something that you can build in 2 months. So investments need to be mapped to your goals. Goals need to be clearly mapped to your life goals. So when the goals I meant, investment should be mapped to your financial goals. Financial goals need to be mapped to your life goals. Life goals have an important element of horizon, and horizon have an important associated factor of returns or the variability in returns. You need to understand. And of course, the macro plays a super powerful role here. Look at what COVID did, the kind of volatility it created in the financial markets this year. So macros need to be embedded as well. And of course, the stage of your life. In 50, you are a different person. In 30s, you are a different person. In 70s, you will be a different person. These 5-6 parameters play a very strong role in creating a solid financial life for you as an individual or as a couple.
Sure. In fact, Anup, financial planning is an ongoing process, and Amit had rightly put it, that we're all evolving, and even for couples. So there might be life stages where they need to, maybe increase their current investments. So talking about maybe, extending their family or a new member in the family. Could you share some insights, some tips, what couples need to take care, and what are the things that we need to keep in their mind when they're planning of, maybe extending the family or having the second child and such developments?
Okay. So, as I said earlier, at every event in your life, your financial goals keep on evolving. And you can't just do an exercise of financial planning once and it's all taken care of. Because when you start your marriage, your financial goals are different. When you have a kid, your goals are different. When you have second kid, possibly the third, fourth will have marginal change, but it will have a change. But the fact that every new event in your life will result into new financial goals, and one must at all point in times relook at them, learn about them, apply both common sense as well as expert sense at different intervals, because you just can't assume an exercise that it's my financial goals, I've given it to the expert, he'll plan. You have to spend time, apply your mind, understand that what sounds logical at a goal level from your own perspective and what the expert tells you. You got to put that mesh together and balance it out. The second thing that you got to do very actively is you have to be, you can't do financial planning when you need it. You have to start doing it much in advance, because there is a value for planning in advance. Just the way Warren Buffett said very interestingly in his book, it says that I made my first investment when I was 11. And guess he said that I wasted my time before that, which means he realized that the value of starting to invest early. Okay, you cannot start your financial planning goals just in time. You have to start well in advance, because there will be two leverage. One is you will get a leverage of compounding, because you will get that much more time to be able to invest and get your money making money. A lot of retail investors don't think about, they think about savings, but they really don't think about putting their money to generate money. It's important to have that mindset. If you really want to make your financial goals target meet, with higher probability and higher success rate, then you've got to plan. You've got to invest and start investing early. Even if you start investing small, that investment that you invest small will have a longer horizon to invest. And the second thing one has to understand, if you have shorter durations for planning cycles, your ability to, you have to take some risk, because if your horizon for next goal is 5 years, for instance, I want to get into my retirement in 5 years, I will have only 5 years to invest. In that, I have to invest in asset classes which will be, risky, which means I want an alpha from the market, like the way Amit mentioned. If you want an alpha, you'll take a risk. If you don't want an alpha, you'll invest in long-term assets, which will have risk adjusted, will give you an inflation adjusted return, which will be good enough to meet your goals. So if you start early as a couple, if you start early, you have a leverage of compounding. You also have a leverage of making sure you invest in risk adjusted assets, then taking risky bets on it. The third thing I will tell you as a rule that investors need to understand is, when you are in your earning ages, your ability to take visibility of future cash flows is much better, because your earning ages are there with you and your visibility on your skills and market condition, everything. But as you're closer to your retirement age, your ability to take risk on alpha based assets is very less. You will end up taking more conservative return based things, and conservative returns will come at a cost, which means you'll say, no, I want to make an FD based return. Then you get FD based IRRs. But if you want to make an alpha, you have to give yourself a planning cycle which gives you a chance to invest in asset classes which can give you the right return, and most importantly, get your money to make money.
Sure. In fact, Amit, being a certified financial transitionist, you help a lot of individuals deal with planned and unplanned changes. So now that we're talking about different stages of, of a couple's life, maybe extending the family and, so on and so forth. So could you share some tips for couples who are are now planning to extend the family, or maybe they are having a second child in the family? What are the things they need to change, rejig? What needs to be done?
Sure. This whole transition is a little more complex process than the way we look at it. Sometimes these transitions can be planned, sometimes these can be unplanned. So COVID is an example of unplanned transition. It forced us to go through a lot of trauma emotionally, mentally, and some people even had a trauma arising from their financial lives. Absolutely unplanned, in fact, which had no anticipation. It just happened. We went through the shock. It took us some time to come out of it and figure out what is our game plan now. And it basically rewired our script about money, about our relationship with money. Then planned transition is when you know that the event is going to happen. We know that the event is being triggered by us because we are choosing to do these actions. As we go through this journey of achieving the new life or the life milestone, this could be having a second child, this could be planning a retirement, this could be a retirement at the age of 40, this could be sale of a business, this could be a amicable separation, whatever it is that we are planning for it. We need to understand that as we go through that journey, we could be going through an emotional volatility of how we are perceiving that destination. Sometimes we could be looking at a destination as an absolutely um, um, a milestone where there is not going to be any problems. But this is life. You cannot have a problem-free state ever. So even if you hit your destination, there are going to be problems. So tone down your expectations. And sometimes you could be looking at a destination or something that you want to be as a completely negative outcome of your effort. So you don't have to be so negative about it. So important aspect is to go through this emotional volatility or changing or varying expectations as you reach your milestone. And when you go through these varying emotional states, you might be altering your perspective about money. So how do we stay constant with respect to managing your money and making sure money is supporting your journey? Money is helping you reach your destination faster. So transition aspects are very important if they're managed holistically, not only with respect to money, with respect to your own emotional makeup, with respect to your own mental strength to achieve what you want to achieve. And there is no harm in admitting that, hey, look, I planned for it and now I'm realizing it was a mistake. I want to make a U-turn. Don't feel embarrassed. Have the courage to make a U-turn and realize it was a mistake, but at least you tried. At least you attempted to reach there. At least you realized during the middle of your journey that it was a wrong call. Let's go back to where we were. So give your life some chances, go through the change, go through the roller coaster ride of emotions and financial outcomes. And at the end of the day, you'll come out as a stronger person. So don't be scared of taking a plunge.
Sure. Before we move on with the Q&A session, there's one important aspect we haven't discussed so far. This was slightly touched by Anup in the beginning of the discussion. So Anup, we're talking about transitions in life. Particularly if I talk about women, they, I believe, go through the maximum transitions. Especially we're talking about financial planning for couples. In case of marriage, in many cases, they relocate. Sometimes they change their career. Sometimes they opt out of their careers. So could you share your insights, your opinions as to how women can better cope up with such changes in the financial aspect?
Firstly, let me start with something that I firmly believe, that women are certainly a stronger sect, and it's only them who can go through such large transitions with great ease. The fact that they are as good as a homemaker, as good as a working professional, as good as a mother is outstanding. It's very high respect for women to have that ability. I'm not saying men don't, but men certainly need a mile to move from where they are. On the financial planning aspect, I certainly believe a woman, even if she's a homemaker, her ability to do financial planning is outstanding, because I can date back to my memory to my mother. My father would give us fixed sum of money to run a house when we were two kids in the house, and she would run her maths so extremely well with far more variables to plan. So to financial planning is no new subject to women, even a decade or a few decades back. Today, financial planning has taken a new mood point because the the real element of fact that there are markets and there are instruments that are available for investments which were clearly not there. The capital markets, the participation of retail investors were not there enough. The fact that retail investors have understood to time the market well is happened because markets have become more transparent. The method of transacting is a lot easier. It's online. The fact that now there are mutual fund organizations, there are insurance ULIPs that are available to participate in the market. The fact that information arbitrage is no longer available, women are actively now participating in the capital markets and are making money. And I think it's a great part of the society. It's 50% of India population that for a longish period of time either didn't have the financial independence or didn't have the access to transact. That coming to the market foray is going to only expand the market, and it will make India richer in terms of more color, more fabric, more earnings and everything. And I also believe, and I want to state one event which in my life I've learned in this 9 months of work from home. I think a large part of Indian society, especially women, which were at a point in time working and are not working because they had kids and they had responsibility in the house. Now, work from home has taught that they could actually contribute back to the economic well-being of themselves, their economy, the society at large, and they can come back to being a part of the corporate world and work as seamlessly as any of us are working from home today. So, in my opinion, COVID has got many negatives, but this is one strong positive. I believe people who believe there was a retirement age, women who believe that they couldn't continue with their career because they had kids, come back to work. Life is open, opportunities are open. Everybody wants. In fact, ET Life is hiring. I think more than 70% of our hiring in the last 9 months are women, because we're actively looking at people who are contributing at point in time to the insurance awareness and growth are now back with us. And so that's a big plus for me from my point of view. Yeah.
Surely. In fact, more of corporates, they need to come forward and, bring that gender parity when it comes to, paychecks for women and men alike. But that would be a separate subject altogether. Amit, just taking a few, your insights on the same issue, and then we'll move on with the Q&A. What is your point of view? Has the burden of childcare increased on women because of this work from home routine that all of us are following in this COVID times?
I think it has eased their life, as Anup was describing, but at the same time, it has made them more oriented towards work throughout the day. I'm not sure if they're able to get the break that they truly deserve. But at the same time, this situation has also kind of forced husbands to be more involved in the household stuff. So if a balance has been achieved by the family, where both of them are contributing towards all aspects of running the household, I think those families have come out victorious in this whole situation. I think that's the real measure of success, that through this 9 months of transition that started in March this year till now, have we recalibrated ourselves while working from home as more responsible partners with equal sense of responsibility, whether it is raising children or running the kitchen or running the financial aspects of the family and continuing to work for a job, and at the same time doing a very strong self-care aspects. If you can't take care of yourself, your emotional, mental and physical health, you won't be able to become a strong giver to run your household. So self-care, self-sustainability and joint responsibility, accountability, I think it has been a very positive experience, although it was traumatic. But I'm sure most of the families will come out as a new calibration of working together and taking responsibilities jointly and getting involved in all aspects of running the house. That's what.
So right. I think the new balance.
Sure.
It's a good point, Amit. That's a good balance that the household have found. Yeah. I think there's an appreciation for the household work and the responsibility of bringing the kids up together.
Yeah.
that's really changed.
I'm getting all positive messages, even if it's been a situation of a layoff. If any spouse has lost the job,
Yeah.
been a short-term trauma, but they have come out pretty strongly in terms of contributing other areas because you are so constrained on other resources now. You can't
Yeah.
add on a staff in your house easily. You
Yeah.
can't step out of the house so easily. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done before you do the real work for your household.
I
Managing
agree.
children on laptop, computers, not letting them go out. If you take them out, then how do we take care of them? If you're with your parents, how are you taking care of them? Medicines, grocery, how are you arranging all that? I mean, it's mind-boggling how we have reestablished ourselves in this new
I
world.
couldn't agree with you more. I think human beings have become slightly more with gratitude. They've sort of valued what they have, and they've also been slightly humble at things that they've got in life, and sense of better being of sort of what happened to the people that were walking back home. You sort of realize that how lucky were you to get a shelter and get a food on your table, and you're sort of thankful to the Almighty to have the life that you have. So you've obviously had your cribs in your corporate life of other things, and this not being there, that not being there. Suddenly
Right.
realize there's so much that you have that the world didn't have.
Yeah, two things which has come out other than all the recalibration aspects. One, you don't need a lot of things to be happy in life.
Yeah.
You can manage. You can
Yeah.
manage with your restricted environment and still be happy. Second, you need to move fast. You
Yeah.
really need to adapt to the new
Yeah.
technology and become
Yeah.
equally productive. So
Yeah.
how sharp you are, how calm and serene you are in order to take this change in stride, which
Yeah.
goes back to self-care, how well you're taking care of yourself emotionally, mentally, and physically. The sequence used to be physical fitness,
Yes.
in mental if there is an issue, then emotional. What is emotional? How is it different from mental? But now I
That was
feel
the least talked about. That was
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
least talked about, I think.
Yeah.
so. We have
So
we
that
have
was the brighter side. Yeah, that was the brighter side of these difficult times that people came out. They realized the importance of self-care and self-grooming and updating themselves with the latest technology. On that note, let's start with the Q&A now. We've received a lot of questions from our viewers. I'm starting with Anup first. It's a very brief question, but I found it a little interesting. Ayush says, how to create wealth if I'm getting married in a couple of days. Maybe he's referring to the near future. He hasn't mentioned when he's getting married, but is creating wealth the only target one should have, Anup?
Firstly, I want to congratulate Ayush on that big event in his life. Uh, on a specific note, I would say that it's an important event, and it's about bringing a new life with your life. So it's important that you plan it well, not only financially but also from making sure that you are mentally tuned to adjust yourself to a new life coming with you, which means you have to make sure you are firstly anchored around adjustments. You have anchored around the environment in which you're going to get the spouse, to make sure that she's also anchored extremely well in the household, which is making sure that she's in an emotionally secure zone. And there are clear agreements of how you will make the transition from being single to being married, from all your habits of time that you would do for regular things. So plan that well.
Right.
Plan her inducting into your family extremely well, because as they say, well begun is half done. You'll have to begin the marriage at a positive note so that the shocks are lesser and the transition is far easier for both of you guys. On the financial well-being, please be extremely clear that there will be a large event expenditure around marriage. If it happened during COVID, it will be very less because the restriction on people. But if it happened post the COVID settlement, you will do a big bang marriage. There will be honeymoon. There will be expenditure around socializing and other things. So you have to make sure that you plan well. You got to make sure that you plan all of this extremely well, because for both partners, this is a time which will never come back. You got to give the best to the relationship at the beginning and throughout, but the beginning has to be really good, because for then it's easy to adjust along the way. You got to plan it well. My request to all young people looking to get married is get into the habit of, sort of planning yourself well. A lot of people nowadays get into the thing of let's spend and then whatever gets saved is the saving. Here again,
Then
I will
we'll see.
quote.
Then we'll see.
Here again, I'll quote Warren Buffett. I've been reading him for now 2 decades. It stays with me. He's saying, don't spend and then save. First save and then spend what you have, the balance of it. So you got to make sure that you plan your life well, because only if you planned it well and you begun right, you will be able to make sure that the money matters are well sorted in your relationship. The spouse is also well understood that there is a monthly SIP going through either mutual fund or through ULIPs, or I'm investing in recurring investment options, which are either fixed income or otherwise. But the spouse is also well aware that I'm making 100,000, I'm investing 30,000 of that, 70,000 of its expenditures are budgeted for these things. This is how we live our life. Life is clear. It's about setting clear expectations around how the financials will work and making sure that no dream that you got to see for together for yourself is unfulfilled because you did not plan it very well. So that's my only request for a new person entering into marriage.
Sure. And in fact, Anup, COVID or no COVID, but honeymoon is one expense that will happen in
Yeah. And nowadays it's not about one honeymoon. People take multiple honeymoons. So people have to plan for all of those outdoors and
so
be
maybe
able
they
to see
can
places and be.
Sure.
Yeah.
And spend the money which they saved on their wedding on the trips. On that note, let's move on to the next question. This is for Amit. Dilip Prajapat has sent us a question. He says that he's 30 years old, he's married, and he's a government servant with an annual income of 9 lakh rupees. He wants advice on 2 things. One, he needs a corpus of 15 lakhs in the next 3 years to build a house in his hometown. And number 2, another sum of 40-50 lakhs, which is a huge amount, for a house at his residence in the next 10 years. So you think the goal that is set and the time that he has, they are mismatched? What do you think?
No, if he has the capacity to save and invest, I don't think it's a mismatch. So we don't know what his monthly expenses are. In other words, what his monthly savings are. No goal is an unachievable goal. Every goal is possible. So until we know what his monthly savings are, we can't tell him whether he will be successful in achieving his goals. But 15 lakhs in 3 years is saving about 5 lakhs a year. And if you have money invested in debt funds, which is giving FD plus 1%, let's say 6%, then you probably need to invest about 4.5, 9, about 13, between 13 and 14 lakhs to hit the target of 15 lakhs in 3 years. Look at the tax efficiency accordingly. For a 10-year goal of, is that amount 40 lakhs or 50 lakhs, Pallavi? How much?
50 lakh is the second target. And
50. So index-based investing, he can do index funds or large cap funds. And if he's new to mutual funds, he needs to go through the cycle of building risk tolerance of equity funds and the volatility in the equity market. It's doable. That is easily doable because the SIP amount is not going to be much higher compared to 4.5 lakhs a year for 3-year goal. So we don't know what his monthly savings are, but fairly doable. He needs to evaluate if he's buying house for self-use or investments. He might be under the impression that real estate is the wealth creator. So he needs to evaluate whether it's a self-use house or if it's an investment. Then if it's an investment, then he better be sure, is real estate the only option after 3 years, or should he continue investing in financial assets?
All right. The next question is for Anup, and this is sent by Vikas. He says, what are the possible ways to attain financial freedom? So tell us, Anup, firstly, how can he achieve that and what are the different ways?
Okay, so very broad question, but let me try and give a specific answer. Firstly, plan. You've got to plan for your financial goals and know and very clearly as to what life stage you are in and what are my goals in my short, medium, long term. Pen them down, put an economical value to what those goals are. The second thing is I'm going to say you got to start on a goal early. I said it before, I'll say it again. Longer durations allow you to capture the market volatility. If you remember the point Amit mentioned, like if you see markets over a 1 day, 1 month, 1 year horizon, there will be volatility. But if you see them over a half a decade or a decade, you will see a slightly smoother curve towards the whole thing. And hence, if you plan much in advance, you will be able to take care of the volatility that comes on the way. But your end goal will be fairly protected. So give your investments time. Give them time to breathe. Otherwise, you will end up making decisions of entering at the wrong time or exiting in the wrong time. And money is never about, and markets is never about the point of in the rupee of investment. It's the time you entered the stock and the time you exit the stock. That's what makes the return higher or lower. The third thing is, please value the compounding impact, which a lot of investors don't end up seeing it very obvious. If you start investing 10,000 rupees SIP today, at the end of 30, 40 years, that corpus will be so big that will take care of all your retirement needs, and provided your retirement needs are in the zone of economic viability. But if you land up giving that same thing horizon only 10 years of compounding, it won't make you the same return. You've got to start early. Small sums, but start investing.
Sure.
Fourth and more important parameter is get and make your money generate money. Gone are the times where you said, I had money in my Kijori and that was good enough. You have to make sure that your money beats inflation plus 2-3% on that as an alpha for you to be able to get the economical value of money increasing. Don't just park your money. Keep that safety net with you, what Amit just mentioned. Safety net is good enough, which is 3, 6 months, 9 months of liquidity around critical expenses. Build that money to get going to markets. So that's the only reason, that's the only 4 principles I can share, which will help people sort of be economically, more healthy position than not starting at all.
Sure. So we'll take a few more questions before we wind up the session. Next is for Amit, and this is the first female viewer's question that we're taking. Divya has sent us a question. She says, we both are co-founders of a startup business. How can we manage our personal finances better?
Yeah.
Can you share some quick tips for her?
Yeah. Welcome to the world of aspirations. 2 entrepreneurs living together. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of attention going towards making sure your entrepreneurial stint is successful. You have to watch out for a couple of things. One, do not erode your emergency corpus. If you're eroding your emergency fund or emergency corpus, which is there to take care of your, zero income phase, then you better make sure that you have people who are ready to lend you money. And it's going to be only friends and family in this phase. So please maintain a very strong lid on your emergency corpus, and don't be in a rush to pump in a lot of money to become successful. It doesn't have to be a lot of money to become successful. You can establish other operational efficiency, discipline, type of clients, target audience that your entrepreneurial venture should focus on. Try to be profitable within your limited resources and maintain an emergency fund would be my quick 2 takeaways for them.
Sure. Next question is for Anup, and that's sent by Meenakshi Agarwal. She says, how early should I start financial planning for a child? So she hasn't mentioned whether she already has a child or she's planning for one, but how early is early?
Okay. See, planning for a child is an important event and needs to be given its due importance. I would suggest as soon as you, before the child is born, there are some expenditures around, the maternity side of the whole thing, around the, initial vaccination. Please make sure those funds are well protected for. The most important event in the child's life is, apart from his nurturing and well-being, is the amount of time you invest in building a value system in your child. Please make sure that the physical time is available as investment first. the second and most important thing that you got to be worrying about is, as parents, our number one responsibility is to provide for a good education for our children, because that is the bedrock of how they are going to be set for the future. Education, as we all know, is an expensive affair. It is rising at the rate of education costs is rising higher than the inflation rate. You've got to plan for it very, very scientifically. Depending on whether you plan for an Indian education or an Ivy League education or otherwise masters and above, beyond, the expenditures are phenomenal and big. You've got to, as parent, make sure that the education of the child is at zero risk. And the matter of fact is, the education of child has to happen while you are there, irrespective if you're there or not there. Unfortunately, if that's the case, you've got to make sure that education is not zero risk. And here, I'd like to place on record that life insurance has products which give you that cover just in case you are not there. While they will give you enough and more reasons to invest in case you're there, but then in case you're not there, that also is a great product available in life insurance. It's called waiver of premium. It's a part of the product, child product option that majority life insurance have. Some may have it, which will be more efficient in terms of returns, but you got to take a life insurance product. It gives you the options of waiver of premium, which essentially means in case the policy proposer dies for whatever reason, or thereby the corpus still continues to be given to the family at the events that have been planned, either it's 18 or 21. The cash flows are provided for the education corpus of the child. I have recently had very close friends whom we have lost just pre-COVID, and I'm grateful that the family had bought a child cover, because that ensured that the education at zero risk, and you can't leave the child education to anybody else's decision to support or not to support. It's an important responsibility for a parent to give to a child.
Sure. So one last question for Amit. This question is sent by Suresh, and he wants to know how the total tax can be optimized by splitting the deposits or the assets in two different names between husband and wife.
Well, we need to differentiate tax evasion from tax planning. So we need to evaluate what is the source of funds. Is it one person's assets, or is it two people's assets? If it's one person's assets, it's better he keeps the money invested in his name. He can have a secondary joint ownership for the asset, but it will probably not be appropriate to hand over the portion of assets to spouse and have the assets invested in the spouse's name, because that's going to be, if not done properly, that could be a tax evasion. You might come under the income tax scanner. So see who contributed to building and accumulating those assets, maintaining the ownership, and creating a tax plan of distributing those assets with proper declarations and gift deeds would be an appropriate way to move forward.
Sure. So one last question for Anup, and that would be the end of the session. This question is sent by KD Agarwal. He says, how to have a happily ever after marriage without disagreements over money? Please suggest some mutual funds or some instruments for beginners, and how to monitor the market hazards. So probably he keeps a watch on what is happening in the markets as well. So what should be the ideal approach? Your suggestions, Anup?
Okay, Mr. Agarwal, my advice on a happy marriage is, as I shared before, make sure there's complete alignment on goals, on which goals are important and which goals, how are you providing for each of the goals? Where is the cash flow for the goals coming in? What is the risk associated with those investments? What are the, like Amit was saying, there is the inherency, the declaration, the nominee, everything is extremely clear. That for me is the biggest important for every marriage life. When there is ambiguity about, wife wants to buy a holiday home and husband has no view of buying a holiday home, at a point in time that becomes like the conversation breaker and saying, you are buying more, mutual fund, whereas I'm interested in buying. How is that going to help fulfill? You want to make sure that those ambiguities are off the table. Sit back as spouse and make sure that those goals are understood, There's investment cash flows understood, the nominee and the flows are well understood, the risk associated with the assets are understood. It's the biggest important for a happy married life. On the second question about mutual fund, I think, as mutual funds will always say, past performance is not a reflection of the future, but it's an indicator. It's a reasonable amount of indicator that if your mutual funds have, there are Crystal rating, there are Morningstar ratings, there are enough and more rating agencies which classically give you fund returns over 1, 3, 5, 7 years and tell you what the CAGR returns are. However, I'm requesting for investors to obviously look at past returns, but also bear in mind, you've got to research your own self. What sectors are these mutual funds catering to? Are they catering to large cap, mid cap, small cap? Are they sectorial in view? And you've got to have reading enough of the view that whether these sectors are by and large the sectors that you believe basis on your own primary and secondary research, and not saying insider trading, but some research about yours to give you some view about how well is the market outlook going to look like. Consult an expert. Look at finding an expert like Amit who understands market much better than you, because just the way you may have the illness, but you may not be the doctor to solve it. Because you need a financial well-being, you need to find an expert to guide you on that. So find an expert. Look at your own primary, secondary research. Spend time on that. Have alignment on goals. Should be a reasonable enough thing for you to invest in mutual fund. Last advice is mutual fund is best done it through SIP mode than through bulk, because bulk will catch you on different days of the market. Do it SIP is my view on this one.
Sure.
Amit, you want to add a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Amit, you want to add something on that?
No, I agree. There was one point that I wanted to add to, and that's slipping my mind. The sooner you start, the open you are with your spouse. And also, two things I want you to accept. One, it's okay to disagree. It's not the end of the world. If you have different opinion on two different goals, it's fine. That's okay.
The communication has to be there.
Communication has to be there, and focus on what you guys agree on, and the disagreement part will naturally go away, or it'll get converted into agreement. And lastly, failures may happen. You may see that things are not unfolding the way you anticipated. So be ready, be flexible, be adaptive, and be ready to rejig your entire financial plan and investments portfolio to achieve your financial goals. Nothing is cast in stone in life, is what I'm trying to say. Things change, times change, your perspectives change, plans can also change accordingly.
Great. So that brings us to the close of this very interesting and interactive session. Thank you, both of you, for giving your precious time and coming on the panel for this topic for financial planning for all the couples. And for all the ET viewers, we would like to tell you that this is an ongoing series where we cover all the different aspects and phases of life. So stay tuned to ET for more updates. Thank you, both of you.